Hello, welcome to ArtTutorialsOnline.com. My name is Paul Priestley and today we're going to be drawing a sunset, and it's going to be a wonderful sunset drawn in the style of James W. Turner, the great British artist. Well, we can't hang around, let's make a start!
I'm going to be using 3 pencils, an HB, 2B and 6B pencil plus a piece of graphite. Okay, and make the start. We're going to draw out the horizon. You can just sketch it in for the first part. And then I'm going to suggest the sun. Now, I'm only drawing part of the sun because it's going to be peering above the clouds. Now, I'm drawing some very simple cloud shapes, but I'm doing them in a particular way. What I'm going to do is to get them all to focus down on the sun. Now, if you watch what I'm doing here, you can see I'm just suggesting the clouds. I'm drawing this with the HB pencil, by the way, the harder of all the 3 pencils. You see how they're all pointing down towards the sun? And it gets the eye to focus onto the sun itself. You see the idea? I just suggest now the reflection in the water, as you can see here. The reflection gets slightly wider as it comes towards you, so you can remember to do that. Now, what I'm going to do, it's a very simple process this. I'm going to shade on the inside of the line, as you can see here, on this bottom set of clouds. Now, I'm doing this with my 2B pencil, and I'm doing it quite gently. I'm not pressing on too hard, and I'm just roughly going round these edges. I'm varying the pressure slightly, as you can see. Okay, just to, because you don't want it too formal, too structured. I mean, these are very simple cloud shapes. You can make them look a little bit more interesting if you wish. But all I'm doing is just suggesting a little bit of shadow on these clouds here, because if the sun's behind them, the clouds are going to be quite dark here. So randomly shading in on the inside of the line. So I'm keeping a sharp edge, as you can see that sharp edge developing. There we go. You see? You just got to keep going. Now, what I'm going to do on the other one, then, the next row up effectively, is I'm going to shade this time on the outside of the line. Okay, you see the difference, and this time I'm going to shade a little bit darker, so I create a dark edge, so we get patches of cloud which are very, very dark as opposed to light. Now you notice as I'm shading above there, it's quite randomly finished. You see, you don't want to be too careful because you don't want nice neat little stripes, but you can see now how the clouds are beginning to develop by simply creating the shading on the outside edge of the line there and just blending it in. Then on the one above that, I'm going back to doing it on the inside. Now you needn't be quite so structured as this, but I've just done it in this format just so you can see how it works. But you can now see how the clouds are beginning to develop. Then they're looking much more natural. And this time I'm using a much lighter tone. You can see I'm not pressing on quite so hard, as you can see as I'm developing these. So it's basically a variety of tones that you're doing, little different pressure on each one and so on. Now I'm going back to these big clouds now, and as you can see I'm just suggesting a little structure to them, so a little bit of light and shade. Don't shade the whole lot, leave patches of white. You see where you get the highlights for the clouds. Remember, clouds are a particular structure, but they're not particular shape. They can be almost any shape, as you can, if you've ever looked in the sky, you can see that for yourself, you see. So it doesn't really matter, but it's a variation of tone, which is important. Lots of variation of tone. And occasionally, if you screw your eyes up and squint at your work and look at it and see if you can see that variation of tones. If everything's looking the same, you're not varying the tone enough. That's it. You see, we can see. Now, I'm just going around here now and putting a few little details in, making the edge of the cloud a bit sharper, or maybe some little bit more details here and there. You can see how I'm gradually building it up, and eventually it will look like clouds. And yet, if you think about it, they're just random shapes. But because they're in the context of the sun here, as you can see, they look like clouds. So I'm just doing a few little wiggly lines here. You see, that's a technical term, by the way, a wiggly line. Yeah, a few little wiggly lines here and there, and you can see it's beginning to look a little bit more like clouds. Now, eventually, we can just darken certain areas, develop certain areas, and see how your idea is working. But don't do anything to the sun, leave the sun as it is. But you can see now how the sun is beginning to stand out, and yet I've done nothing to it. We'll darken the sun later on just to give it a little bit more emphasis. But I'm just finishing off the clouds now, a few little final details before we start filling in the reflections of the sun. Now, I'm just lightly going over the sun, as you can see here, and I'm just suggesting some of the sun's rays coming up. Now, what you've got to be careful of doing this is not to draw those stripes that young children do. Just suggest the rays. With the water, 3 tones. Use 3 tones. So at the back here, I'm using very, very light tones. I'm pressing on very lightly. The lines are very close together. This is very soft, calm sea, as you can see. But now I'm pressing on a little bit harder. So this might be my mid-tone, for example. You can see. And then gradually, as I come further forward, the lines get slightly wider apart and they get darker. So I'm introduce my 3rd tone. And this helps to give that depth and perspective to your drawing. So we're beginning to push that back. I'm just going to suggest 1 or 2 little reflections of the clouds on the water. It's again just suggesting this. You don't need to do too much detail on this at all. As you can see here, I'm just suggesting this and just blended it in. And then just very, very lightly going over where the reflection in the water would be. Imagine if this was a painting, it would be very strong orange then. So just darkening that little section just underneath the sun because it produces that nice contrast, just touching up a few little final pieces. So you can see how this drawing develops. If you put lots of effort into it, make sure your clouds don't look like little blobs. Keep carving it very, very carefully and you should end up with a really nice drawing.
Thank you for watching arttutorialsonline.com. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have and you've learned something, perhaps you might tell your friends and share it with them. But don't forget, subscribe to the channel. That will be much appreciated. Thank you very much.